Mudroomers, it is Carmen here with Mako, and today we're going to review the glaze profile for our stoneware glaze Alabaster. Alabaster is an off-white satin matte glaze that breaks well over texture. It does have a bit of translucency to it and works wonderfully in combinations. So Alabaster is actually the base glaze of 3 different crystal glazes in our stoneware glaze line. We have Indigo Rain, Sea Salt, and Winterwood. Those all use Alabaster as the base. You can check on the label of those glazes, and that is where you will find that information. So starting out, we have our label here. This tile here was fired to cone 6 on a white stoneware clay body. Our firing range states from cone 5 to 10, but there is variability with those results, as we will discuss here. On the side here, there's the AP seal, dinnerware safe notation, and the lot number, which you'll want to use for technical requests. If you're unsure about the dinnerware safe standing of any of our stoneware glazes, or any of our glazes, check on our website for that particular color page. If you look under additional information, that's where you'll see the dinnerware safe labeling for a glaze. So to start, we'll just go ahead and do a quick little application demo. I'm gonna showcase this glaze, how these tiles were done here. So I have 1, 2, and 3 coats, and then the back I've got 3 coats. So I'm going to be using our number 4 soft fan here. We do make a number 8 fan as well. So here's sort of a size comparison between the 2 products, or the 2 tools. I'm going to use this for the tile, but this is great for individuals that might have a hard time putting glaze on thick enough, or if you're glazing a large piece, it works really, really well. I love using this for combinations because it puts the glaze on a little bit thicker. And usually in combinations, I'm doing 2 coats and 2 coats. So I'll put 2 nice heavy coats on with this, and I get some good juicy combos. But for today's sake, I'm gonna go ahead and use this brush since I'm just doing a little tile and I'm kind of heavy-handed anyways. Don't mind the markings on this tile. I'll reuse these tiles for the glaze profiles because I don't really need to fire them. So this yellow is actually really common. When you saturate your bisque, some soluble minerals basically will leach through either from the glaze or from the bisque, and that's kind of how you get that yellowing. So if you're applying glaze and notice this happening, don't worry about it. It doesn't showcase itself in the firing. So it's pretty common. When you're loading your brush, I really just like to mix the brush in the glaze, just completely, really load that guy up there, pull it up so glaze drips off, and basically as soon as it's not a stream, I will put it on the piece. Especially with that first coat, of having enough glaze is really, really helpful since your bisque is not saturated or anything. To start out, the glaze gets absorbed really, really easily. So putting on a nice thick coat really ensures you're getting enough glaze on there. So you want your brush to pull along the surface very easily. If your brush starts catching, you might need to redistribute some product, kind of like I'm doing here, or you'll need to add more product to your brush. So there we go. There's our first coat. You can see it's drying pretty quickly, but it's not drying immediately. So that's another good sign that I put enough glaze on my piece. All right, so first we'll check out our cone 6 tile here. So here you can see 1, 2, and 3 coats. It's kind of difficult to see on this off-white tile having an off-white glaze on it, but hopefully you can tell the building of this like brighter white, this kind of yellowish, is the tile, and then you get a cleaner white here. But we do say that this is an off-white glaze. It's not really a bright white, but compared to the tile, it looks kind of white. but you can see it breaks over texture, it pools really, really well and builds as subsequent coats occur. So here we have cone 6, just 3 coats on the back here. This is a nice smooth matte finish and pretty even coverage. So you really showcase, you don't really see the translucency here, but when you start having it break, that's when you kind of see how the clay body showcases itself through that glaze. So here we have the cone 5 results. So cone 5 honestly does leave it pretty dry. You can see the comparison for the finish here. Our cone 6 has a nice sheen to it, and cone 5 is still kind of feels like underglaze a little bit. So this glaze does like a cone 6 a bit better. I have seen posts where people have success with it at cone 5. A lot of the time adding a hold can really help that clay body mature, because these cones, we're talking about heat work here. It's not exclusively the temperature. So that's why this is dry, but we do have people that have success at cone 5 with alabaster as well as the corresponding crystal glazes. And then next we have our cone 10 firing. It's cone 10 reduction. So we get this beautiful purplish gray that happens, and then we get a decent amount of mobility. You can see the glaze is pooling around the bottom here, so that's how you know it's moving down, in addition to these kind of striations that pull down from the texture on this tile. So here we've got 3 coats and 3 coats. Quite a difference here, but it's very cool. I love this variation that happens with alabaster. And sometimes you can even get some microcrystal buildup too. So it's a really great glaze, very versatile, and produces really cool results. Okie dokie. So let's check out our tile here. So it's nice and dry. We don't have any shiny spots anymore, so we can go ahead and apply our second coat. Again, keeping that brush loaded, but maybe not to the point it's like streaming off of it anymore, since I'm applying a little bit less glaze here, and my bisque is already saturated, so my coats are going to go on a little bit smoother than that first coat. Spread that glaze out nice and even, and then on the back here, get a little bit more glaze so it's going on nice and smooth. All right, we've got our second coat, looking good. Let's check out our results with flux. So here we've got cone 6 with flux. So this has flux under alabaster. So I did 2 coats of flux, of light flux, 2 coats of dark flux, 3 coats of alabaster. I'm honestly surprised it didn't move more. This one seemed to move a lot. The dark flux does tend to be a little bit more stiff than the light flux, so maybe that's why it didn't move so much, but I love this bright white that's brought in here with the light flux, as well as this kind of like blue-white mobility that happens here. And then on the back here, we have flux over alabaster, so you can kind of see exactly where I put the flux here. It's a pretty stark line, because it kind of reacted and then moved down. So here we've got both fluxes dripping down a little bit. Not really a lot of interaction with the flux on top, since it's just kind of melting down over top of it. And then the back here, we have the cone 10 comparison. So we've got our light flux and dark flux. Definitely way more mobility in the cone 10 results. I love these microcrystals, this beautiful purple blue float that's happening here. Really cool stuff. And this kind of performance with the crystals and the little translucent glossy bits, that's kind of what you can expect with a lot of combinations with alabaster, especially if you're combining it with a glossy glaze. So again, a lot of mobility at cone 10 without flux and with flux, even extra mobility there. So over here we have our alternative clay body tests. So I do see a lot of posts where people are kind of struggling using alabaster because it's on a darker clay body. So heads up, Alabaster does react with darker clay bodies, particularly a speckled brown or dark brown. A lot of the time you'll get pitting with that. These tiles here I fired to cone 6 with a 15-minute hold, and that seemed to alleviate some surface issues. If you are doing the hold and still have surface issues, first of all, make sure you're firing it to cone 6 with a hold. Cone 5 is not going to be hot enough to push all those outgassing bubbles out, in addition to having the glaze be finished too, because you saw how stiff it was at cone 5. That's going to be affected with different clay bodies too. So here we have it on a dark brown clay, relatively smooth surface. We do have, you know, a little bit of texture, but no blistering, which is really common with this on a dark brown body. Here we've got the speckled white, so this guy looks pretty good, a nice smooth finish. Speckles come through, so we love that with the Alabaster. So it's basically like a matte glaze with the speckling coming through. And then this is the dark, or the brown, speckle brown. And that looks pretty good too. So the 15-minute hold seemed to really help the surface texture of the different clays, which was really great. And we'll do our final coat on our piece here. So we've got a little bit of shiny bits, but we've got a little bit of dry too. So we'll put our third coat on here. Goes on really smooth with just that one section. And then your final coat on the back. So that's 1, 2, 3 coats fired to cone 6. It should look something like that. And then finally we have our combo results here. So this is Celadon Bloom over Alabaster. So we applied 2 coats of Alabaster all the way to the bottom, and then 2 coats of Celadon Bloom just to the bottom of this texture here. You can see a little bit of mobility. Most of this here, we've got some sagging and then some drips that are happening around where that glaze pooled on the texture here. This seemed to really brighten up that Celadon Bloom, which is cool. It made a brighter blue color. And here we've got sandstone and Alabaster, so much more mobility here. You can see we went all the way down to the bottom and then even pooled around our lip here. Luckily that was there and it saved our kiln shelf. But yeah, great mobility, lovely interaction with these 2 glazes together. Good combo. And then here we have, actually this is a stroking coat over Alabaster. So I did Bluegrass, so SC29. I applied it the same. I didn't go all the way down to the bottom, so you can see that it does have some mobility here. I'm pretty heavy-handed, so 2 coats of each had this kind of mobility happening. If you maybe did 1 coat of stroking coat, you'd still get the pigment. It moves, so you're not going to get any streakiness, and then you might still get some of this floating. So this floating is kind of what happens with the interaction, which I really like. It kind of makes stroking coats a bit more dynamic and has some more visual interest than they normally would at cone 6. Definitely much less stability though, so keep that in mind, just there to add some color. And I think that is all that I have for you today with Alabaster. Be sure to check out the glaze combination gallery on our website to find these combos and more. It's totally searchable. We have cone 06, cone 6, and cone 10 combos on there, so definitely check that out. And please, if you have any technical requests, we have a new technical forum on our website, so you can fill out all the information that you need and you'll be directed to the correct person that way. Thank you so much for tuning in today, guys. Please leave your questions and comments for us. We love to hear from you. And as always, make it Mako.